unending love, never failing peace.
Good morning, and welcome. It is such a chill in the air, not just in my area, but all over the country. So I'm sending you a warm welcome this morning. I'm Gretchel, and welcome to Three Trees Serenity Space. I was going to share this message at church this morning, but my minister used wisdom to cancel service because it is icy out there. So I'm going to share it here. The hummingbird and the practice of nonviolence. There was a terrible fire in the forest, and the flames were just rising from the trees. Smoke filled the air. All the animals ran in fear, doing everything they could to save themselves. All of them ran, all but one tiny little hummingbird. The hummingbird, instead of flying away, flew to the nearest stream, dipped her beak in the water, got one drop of water, and brought it back to the forest and placed the drop in the flame. Now, while all the larger animals were in safety, safe away from the flames, the hummingbird went back and forth and back and forth over and over again. And then the larger animals, they stood back and watched her. Can you imagine? One probably had her hand under her chin looking. Another probably had his arms crossed, shaking his head, patting his feet. So one spoke up and said, "What do you think you're doing? What do you think you can do with this huge fire?" And then the tiny little hummingbird paused and simply said, "I am doing what I can." Now, one drop of water back to the forest, back and forth and back and forth. Moved by her determination, the other animals decided that they would stop running. One by one, they turned back, and the elephant used his trunk. The monkey carried leaves soaked in water, and the birds in the air decided to join in. All of them working together, the fire was finally put out. And the forest was saved, not by one great act, but by many smaller ones that began with a willing heart. So here's the moral of the story. The moral of the story is to do what you can, where you can, and when you can. This story is shared across many African cultures as sacred wisdom about our place in the whole. The hummingbird doesn't measure the fire, it listens to the inner nudge and responds. In these traditions, life is understood as something we share. One touches another one. We all touch each other. When one of us moves in alignment with the indwelling presence of God, it creates a pathway for others to remember their own courage and ability. The question this story leaves with us is not, can I do enough? Rather, it is, am I willing to do my part? Every sincere act matters. Every offer counts. And sometimes the smallest response is exactly what allows healing to begin. So in unity, we're taught that God works in, through, and as us, which means that peace doesn't start someplace else. It starts with us. Dr. Martin Luther King said, "You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step." That is my favorite quote by him. one of my favorite quotes ever. And as we approach Black History Month in February, we're also approaching what's known as the season for nonviolence. It runs from January 30th to April 4th. That's 64 days. Those dates matter. January 30th honors Mahatma Gandhi's birthday. He was educated in law in Britain before moving to South Africa to practice. He also pioneered methods of civil disobedience and inspired global movements for civil rights. On April 4th, 1968, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. Dr. King was born January 15th, 1929. He was a civil rights activist and Baptist minister who was a leader in the civil rights movement. When people hear the word nonviolence, they typically think about external events such as wars, injustice, and other people. Unity teaches something different. It teaches us that nonviolence doesn't start out there. It starts in here, in the space of our heart. And if we skip that part, everything else becomes performative. Before we move further into what exactly is meant by nonviolence, let's take a moment now to be on the same page to understand what nonviolence is not. Nonviolence is not being passive. It's not being so religious that we're no earthly good, or so spiritual that we just bypass what's right in our face. It's not pretending everything is fine when it's not. And it definitely is not silence when truth needs to be spoken. Dr. King said, nonviolence is not the absence of tension, it's the presence of justice. Unity would add that nonviolence is alignment with truth before action, because violence doesn't always look like people raising fists and weapons. Sometimes it looks like harsh self-talk, rushed decisions, fear-based reactions, betraying our own knowing to just keep the peace at all costs. The kind of violence that leaves no bruises, however, it leaves lasting and most times irreparable lifetimes of damage. So, what is nonviolence? It's choosing alignment over reaction, letting thought, word, and action arise from guidance rather than fear, which means that the very first place violence shows up is not out there someplace. It's in how we think and what we say, how we rush into action before listening. We decide whether nonviolence is either practiced or abandoned. Essentially, it's an inside job. Jesus points to this inner origin when he says in Luke 6:45, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. In other words, when we express outwardly, it's always coming from something already active within us. Again, we learn that there's something very practical by which we can live. And Unity teaches that all expression follows a spiritual order. Thought becomes word, and word becomes action. That's simple, right? Yet, when the order is ignored and our actions become reactive, we speak before we are clear and we act before we are aligned with the Creator. But when that order is honored, divine action carries divine truth instead of human force. And when you think about it, nonviolence is not about stopping action, it's about respecting the divine order. We know this as one of the 12 powers in unity. We don't act first and then ask spirit to catch up. We align first and then we move. How do we align ourselves, you might ask? First of all, we pause. Because before every action, we must pause if we are to respond rather than react. And then we listen before every reaction so that we can respond. And then we respond properly. And then we trust that inner knowing. It's not an emotional impulse. We don't feel a sense of urgency. It's a quiet clarity. Dallas Willard, a philosopher and Christian theologian, once said that hurry is the great enemy of the spiritual life. And I would add to that, it's also one of the most subtle, acceptable forms of violence. We hurry decisions, we hurry healing, we hurry answers, events, even time. We hurry, hurry, hurry. How many of you find yourself hurrying sometimes? I bet I'm not alone because I find myself hurrying as well. But you know what? Spirit doesn't rush. When we rush, we usually aren't listening. We're managing fear. So, this is what nonviolence looks like in real life. We pause and we take a breath. Yes, pause. And that pause could also look like affirmative prayer. It looks like allowing silence to do some of the work that may look like sitting in meditation too. Nonviolence asks one simple question before action, and that is this rushing a result of fear or is this coming from God? And if it's fear, stop. If it's God, move. Nonviolence, let's be clear, is not weakness. Nonviolence is self-mastery. It is when mind and heart are speaking the same language. So in closing, as we enter this season for nonviolence, the invitation is simple, not demanding. It's not demanding because of this. Before every action, pause. Before every reaction, listen with your heart. So that's moving with the quiet decision to let God lead the way. Lastly, a powerful and very timely quote posted on Facebook January 12th by one of our long-standing members. I've got to share this with you. And rather than me read it, how about I let her read it now?
We must reject the rhetoric of hate and embrace fully the huge benefits of respect for all. There is truly no excuse for what is happening in our country. Let's exemplify the truth that we are all part of the same family.
Since you made it this far, and thank you so much for being here, would you give this video a thumbs up? It helps the algorithm and YouTube will push it out to more viewers. Thank you so much and watch the last part. Thank you, Sharon. Beloveds, maybe nonviolence isn't about putting out the whole fire. Maybe it's just being faithful with the one drop of water we're given. Through it all, be gentle with yourself. I'm so grateful that you're here. And remember to always pray and meditate before you go out to meet the world.